is it just
Sure.
is it just me, or are you when I talk, am I getting cut off like often?
You're good. You're totally good on my side.
Okay, because sometimes when you talk, it gets like staticky. So sometimes it might be a bit hard to like understand you.
Sure, just let me know whenever it's not going through. But I feel like, wait, how about now?
Oh, this is better. Yeah.
Micro, it's a microphone input. It happens all the time, but I just switched to the better one. All right. Sure. We can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, let me just pull up the notes page and we're good to go.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about sharing my screen, but I'm not sure whether my computer will get stuck after that. So let's just try.
Okay, I'm down. Looks good to me for so far.
Sure.
Okay, I'm ready. So
Okay.
my question to you is, how would you build a product for movies on Facebook?
Oh, I've already done this before.
Oh, okay, I got another one then.
Sure.
Okay, sorry. I was looking at this one yesterday. My apologies. Let me
It's
find
okay.
another one.
Never mind.
Okay, got it. My next question then is, how would you design an elevator?
How would you design an elevator?
Yes.
Um, can we do like a software? Yeah,
Oh
sorry,
yeah.
I'm looking to requirements, but I just feel
Absolutely.
the companies I'm interviewing for is mostly because for Coinbase they were asking about my favorite product. I was asking whether I can bring up some kind of hardware product, and they said just focus on digital ones. So
Okay, sure. Then the next one I have is, well, how would you design a feature for Duolingo?
okay, so the question is how would I design a feature for Duolingo? Before moving on to actually like thinking about this question, I do want to clarify um, our goal here in terms of designing a feature. So do you have a specific goal in mind in terms of like engagement or user acquisition or monetization?
What do you think?
So Duolingo, in my understanding, is relatively a mature product that has gained a lot of users. So we could either look at engagement in terms of deepening the current user, uh, like current engagement between the user and the product, or thinking about monetization. Since Duolingo is aiming for IPO very soon, I think profitability is something that could be considered. So I would pick either engagement or monetization depending on goal here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want me to choose one, or you do you prefer any one of them?
I prefer any of them actually.
Sure. Okay, and I'll just leave it here before making a decision. Some other things I want to ask for is, I'm assuming Duolingo is still largely a consumer product, so we're still looking at consumers as a user right now, right?
Yes, that is true. And
And
what is your definition of consumers then?
like individuals, like individual learners.
Okay.
But I mean, that's a good question. We can also think about other potential. For example, is it possible that we're launching a feature for schools or even companies in terms of adopting a second language?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something to note, you can put this into your question if you want, is that besides the Duolingo app, we also have been branching out very often with a English a ESL kind of standardized test for a lot of people that are international, especially in China. That kind of if you take this test, you're pretty much can be qualified or can be used as a certification of like English proficiency in some areas of the U.S.
Okay, so to rephrase or recap on what you said, Duolingo has been partnering up with some kind of language uh, accreditation organization like ESL and provide imitation tests for individual learners to prepare for their tests, right?
Yes, especially particularly English.
Sure, that's great to know. But the end user is still individual user in this case, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume that our primary target user is still individual language learner. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds good to me.
Sure. And is there any specific segment that you want me to focus on? For example, K-12 or adults or some other learners?
Um, I do have one in mind, but I feel like I would like to hear like your thoughts about this as well.
Sure. So I'll move into more details when it comes to user segments, but initial idea in mind is I'm going to divide users based on their age groups, just because their learning capability and their mental model differs a lot depending on which age group they're in. Could be like using Duolingo for picking up the first language. That could be too early, but it could be the second language while they're in primary school, high school, or university, or maybe after they actually join the workforce. So I could talk more about that during the user segment section. Great. And also, I'm wondering if there are any specific parts of the product that we are actually before that, do we want to design a feature for the mobile platform or the web platform?
Let's focus on the mobile platform.
Sure. And when you say mobile, are we specifically looking at like mobile phones or including iPad as well? Can we
We're,
focus
include,
on mobile phone right now?
we're including both phones and iPads as well. So tablet versions count as well.
Both phones and tablets. So I would just put a note here like, in terms of like touch experience, touch and mobile experience. Okay, and another question will be, is there any specific part of the current product that you want me to focus on? I mean, there could be several stages from a top line line. There's always I mean, the core product offering that Duolingo is offering is the course, right? Like in terms of course package, um, and and that also always happens in like different sessions. And let me rethink about this. Of course, you have the actual learning process, and you have the home screen. So the learning process refers to the minutes of going through the exercise and actually memorizing stuff. And the home screen is more to provide a context for the user to know where they are in terms of the learning progress. And there's also the new language selection or maybe onboarding. So whenever the user wants to pick up another language, they will go through a process of choosing language and actually be navigating to be brought up to that language interface. So the actual learning process, the home screen, and the language selection are the three major areas of the product that I'm thinking about right now. Do you think there are other parts that I haven't included, or do you want me to focus on one of them to propose a feature?
I think these processes are good. I think the only question I have is in terms of learning progress and new language selection onboarding, right?
Mhm.
Isn't new language selection onboarding a part of the learning process itself?
I choose to distinguish two because the learning process itself is more like repetitive and um, like the process is almost the same, and then people just have to go through it time after time. Whereas the onboarding process, although the format looks similar, but it does have a slightly different user journey in terms of like there are steps where you have to assess people's language level and you have to get more user data. Whereas the learning process is more focused on giving you the knowledge and getting you into the right exercise. So I still treat them different. Onboarding and new language selection is more on a one-time base, whereas learning process is more on like continuous basis.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. I like your reasoning. I don't have a preference for either of them, so it's totally up to you.
Sure. And I guess we can either pick one of them to propose a new feature, or we could propose a new product section, for example, a community section that could help encourage communication between language learners. So would that be part of the consideration as well, or do you want me to focus on existing products?
Let's focus on the existing product right now.
Sure. I'll just put a note, community section, but where we want to focus on the existing products. Great. Just the last question before I dive in. Is there any specific area or issue that you want me to look into when it comes to designing the new feature, or it's completely open?
This is completely open.
Okay, sounds great. So the way I'm going to approach this question is I'm going to, let me put a note here. I'm going to start with analyzing our user and user segments and the use cases, and then try to identify a specific user segment to focus on. And later on, I'm going to focus on the pain points that they might have in terms of their current user journey. And then uh, probably will also prioritize one or two pain points to address. And then I'm going to brainstorm some solutions to like basically the feature itself to solve this pain point, since we only want one feature. So I'm going to prioritize here as well. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about like if we have the time, I'm going to talk about the risks and trade-offs, and, or success metrics. Does this structure sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Great. I'm going to start brainstorming some user segments we have here. So in terms of user segments, one way that I can think about to divide the user groups is by their age groups, as I mentioned. So more specifically, I think there is we start with the K-12 group, which basically include primary school, junior, and high school students. And I'm not counting in like children before primary school, because I think their mental capability will not be enough for them to actually use a mobile app to do so, to learn a language, mostly taught by parents. And the second group I'm thinking about is university students. They're relatively more equipped with knowledge and skills when it comes to learning. So I treat them as a different group. I mean, they're still in an education environment. And then moving on to after graduation, there are two segments that I have here. It's in terms of early career and experienced professionals. I think early careers people, in terms of the mental process, they're still pretty similar to university students, but they're just in a different environment now in the workforce. Whereas for experienced professionals, they're less technical. They're not really familiar with the new technologies. So I would treat their needs and preference a little bit different as well. So those four are the use segments I have in mind. Do you have any advice, or do you want me to propose another way to divide them?
Yeah, no, those are good personas. Yeah, I'm down to see how you kind of segment them even more.
You want me to segment them maybe,
Oh,
or
I'm sorry. Just definitely like it's up to you to choose which segment that you want to focus on.
sure. And since we haven't picked a specific goal here, I was talking about engagement monetization. So I'm more prone to pick engagement, just because we are now more granular towards the user persona that we're targeting at, and I can think of some potential to improve the engagement. But if you're okay, I'm gonna just treat engagement as a primary goal here.
Yeah, I agree with that decision.
Great. And then, do we have any knowledge about the current user group of Duolingo? Like across those four user segments, do we know the distribution of them in our current user segments or user base?
We don't have a clear guidance, but we do know that a majority of the majority of users that we do have a lot of them are university students slash people around early careers.
Okay, so majority are uni students and early careers. And so here, let me think. So could potentially we could think about increased engagement of this group, because our goal is not user acquisition. So I would deprioritize experienced professionals and K-12 students for now, just because they're not really consisting of a huge user group for now. And then between university students' early careers, do we have like a more detailed breakdown, or that's all we know so far?
That's all we know so far.
Okay. Um, so I'm gonna propose some criteria to in terms of like how we would like to prioritize. Um, so when thinking about prioritization and with the goal of engagement in mind, I'm thinking from two aspects. One is the depth of the uh, one is depth, the other one is width. So basically, depth refers to how large is the current gap between user need as well as the feature where the product that we're offering. And when it comes to engagement, that's basically referring to the potential room for growth in terms of how much engagement we can improve when it comes to that user's persona. And width basically refers to so depth refers to the individual level, and width refers to like how many number of people, how large is the number of people that it's going to be impacted. Um, since we don't have any specific data here in terms of like the distribution between university students and early careers, I would just treat them as almost equal. So now we're going to look at depth, and from this standpoint, I would prefer to target at early careers just because I think university students, they're relatively more well versed in its educational environment. So when it comes to picking up a new skill or language, they're more capable of navigating themselves. Whereas for early careers, they're relatively further away from the educational environment, and also they're busy in their daily life, handling their professional work. So it will be relatively harder for them to constantly engage with Duolingo. So I'm prone to pick early career as a focus, if that's okay with you.
Yep, that works with me.
Sure. So now I'm gonna um, brainstorm some use cases, like main use cases of those people. Basically, when it comes to pick up a new language, and we're talking about those users in the U.S. market, right? Or are we sure?
Yeah, we're talking about U.S. market.
Okay. So two things starting in mind right now is the in terms of purposes, the, it could be either for business purposes. For example, if they're actually doing business with Chinese people, and then those early career people want to engage in learning and be more ready for their professional development, and the other purpose would be for more for leisure purpose or personal interest. Um, do you want me to focus on one of them, or
I think it's up to you and to decide between the two.
sure? From my current um, thought, I feel like for business purposes, if the business is actually critically dependent on the language, there it is possible that the company will actually invest in resources to to get their employees ready for that. Whereas I think there are a large number of individuals who want to explore a second language on their spare time. That could be a larger group of people who haven't really got their need like satisfied. So I'm prone to focus on the leisure or personal interest purposes. And for this, I guess we definitely have people who are like active learners and relatively passive or casual learners. And so basically, active learners might form the habit of using the platform on a regular basis. And whereas passive or casual learners, they only check the platform maybe whenever prompted or when they feel like doing so, or maybe having the spare time. So, do you want me to focus on the active or the passives?
Let's say that we're going to be focusing on passive learners.
The passive learners. Okay. Um, sure. So basically, we're pretty narrowed down like passive learners now. Uh, so I think we can pretty much wrap up the discussion here in terms of users. So far, what we have here is that we want to target at early career users who is trying to pick up a new language in their spare time out of personal interest, and then we're specifically looking at passive users who don't really use the platform on a regular basis right now, and the goal here is to improve the engagement. So I'll treat that as a background information to brainstorm about the pain points. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Great. Okay. So user persona, early career casual learners want to pick up new language. What? So I do have some ideas in mind that I would like to share with you first. I break down the pain points into two two major buckets. The first one is language selection. That's basically about what to learn, and then the second part is lack of motivation, which is more about why I would be learning. So basically, what and why question. Of course, we can move into how as well, but I would focus on those two first to elaborate a little bit more. In terms of language selection, basically it's about what language should I learn as a new user, especially given that I'm early career and I'm only learning the language on a casual basis. So I think, especially for American English speakers, because US is more like a cultural center of the world. People don't necessarily get exposed to other cultural language at their early years, so that could be a problem when it comes to really knowing what language to choose. And in terms of motivation, I think there are two major issues here. The first one is it is hard to pick up a language without practicing regularly. So given that I'm only a casual learner, I just don't really have the habit of constantly checking the app and practicing. And then uh, knowing that my skill is not improving as fast will further discourage me from checking the app. So it sort of falls into this kind of downward spiral loop. that is preventing me from actually picking up the language. And the second issue here is that I don't really have a use case because, as I mentioned, this is not something that is related to my work or business. I don't really have a frequent use case. So very often when I'm only learning the language for learning purpose, I might lose the motivation. So those are the two major areas. I mean, like the what and how questions are the major areas I have in mind. Do you want me to propose some others, or maybe dig deeper into the current listings?
I think it's these two are good. You can definitely dive in deeper to decide on which pain point or which of the two pain points you want to focus on.
Sure. Let me see. So from my current, well, actually, I think I should propose like some criteria in terms of how to prioritize. I would say it would be similar to what I have in terms of priorities and use cases, basically measuring like the depth and width of the issue we're describing here, like in terms of how large is the pain point and how many people are actually suffering from it. Um, I think language selection issue, although it could be common across language learners, it is not as hard a problem because they're just casually picking up a second language. It doesn't matter if they actually picked up the wrong language, or there's even no standard in terms of judging whether this is good language pickup or not. So I would say that like the depth of this pain point is not as high. Where when it comes to motivation, I think that's a major cause of people losing interest in using Duolingo, especially given that they only have like a spare time and they don't really check the regularly. Um, so and then and when it comes to, I mean, actually, I think it's a good starting point. I mean, we'll just treat lack of motivation as a pain point that we want to address, and then during the solution part, I can see whether I can solve both or maybe just focus on one. Does that sound good to you?
Yep, that works with me.
Great. If that's the case, then I'm gonna focus on basically proposing a feature that is solving the motivation problem. Before moving on to solution, I'm wondering, do you want me to, or maybe if there are anything that I have to know in terms of what we are currently offering to trigger the motivation or provide more incentive for the user to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So current solutions that we have in terms of keeping user engagement is that we have a streaks function, kind of similar to Snapchat, where people, if they practice daily, they get these streaks, and these streaks also at the same time kind of is it's there's nothing substantial to it, but it's kind of incentivizes users to keep practicing every day in order to maintain this number.
Hmm. Sure. So the streaks is that spelled correctly?
Streaks, STREAK.
Okay. The streaks are the basically, as I understand, is like if you spend enough time in the app during the day, you get like a kudos or credit or something, or
Yeah, it's just like a number. Like for example, if you practice 5 days in a row consecutively, then you get a streak number of 5. And
Mhm.
then people would like to want to keep that up until like you have 700. It's more of a flex than anything else.
So I assume once you get to a certain points, you get a badge or something as a credit.
Exactly. Yep.
And do we have anything happening afterwards? Like let's say if you get enough badges, you get some kind of further reward, or the badges is actually the end game already.
There is no reward. The only reward that people get are their numbers just keeping to increase. So some people have like thousand day streaks, and then the higher the number, we see more users are more incentivized to use Duolingo because they want to keep that number and they don't want to break it.
What is the incentive behind keeping a high number, though? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it's really there is no motivation. Just people seem to have this connotation kind of similar to Snapchat streaks, where they feel like they already put so much effort into maintaining this streak that they don't want to risk breaking it and then destroying all their efforts that they worked to build up this number.
So basically, it's a sunk cost that they don't want to give in, right? Give up.
Right. The more invested in, the higher the cost it is for them to break it.
Sure, sounds good. Okay, so that's the current motivation mechanism that we have in place. So I'm gonna spend some time brainstorming some other solutions that I have in mind.
Absolutely.
So from the top of my head, I do have like three potential ideas that I want to walk through with you. To begin with, the first one I came up with is about like providing a more multimedia or interactive form of using the language. So one example could be like movie dubbing. So once the user actually is at a certain level of their language learning, we could provide options for them to like dub a small clip of a movie. So they're actually using the language they're picking up, and then they could like listen to what they what it would sound like. I think that would be a pretty interactive way, and let's solve the issue of having no real use case for um, for this language, because I think it's more interactive and useful than finishing small exercises, although it's not as like realistically useful as they can put in real life. That's the first idea. And the second one is to invite some kind of social mechanism or social competition into the experience of using Duolingo. So similar to in Apple Watch, where you can invite friends to launch a small competition. You can invite friends to join Duolingo and compete with you in terms of language learning progress. I think that will further motivate users to keep up the learning, and like bi-directionally, people can encourage each other as well. And the third thing is called a Duolingo store feature, where people can actually utilize the credits they're earning through the streaks, or the, 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 the progress they're earning on language learning, and use that credit to trade or buy virtual or physical objects. And ideally, those objects would be related to the language learning. For example, for virtual objects, it could be like a learning package or like some kind of resources that they can use to further help with their language learning, or it could be some kind of Duolingo gifts or anniversary gifts or something that could be distributed to user. And I think that can further improve the brand image as well. So those three are the ideas I have in mind. Do you have any questions or feedback from them?
Yeah, these three seem like very valid solutions. I'm curious to see how you would like to prioritize them.
Sure. To prioritize those features, I think the criteria I'm going to adopt is basically twofold. Um, I'm going to write on this prioritization. First is the user benefits, like in terms of how much additional value we bring into the table, and the second thing is the implementation cost. So basically, can be further broken down into like technical cost and operational other costs. So going through the three options right now, movie dubbing, um, I think it could be providing like high user value. Just because, as I mentioned, I think as compared to like small pieces of exercise, I think movie dubbing is more immersive and fun to engage with. So I think that could be like a very different learning experience for them, and they are basically just practicing without even noticing they're practicing. Whereas in terms of like implementation cost, it would involve uh, supporting. I would put it as high because it will involve some supporting um, multimedia, specifically video and audio experience within the Duolingo app. That would basically indicate more file handling, and there could be like latency of loading and things like that. There are all sorts of issues that could be related to that. So the technical cost could be high. There's also the operational cost in terms of customizing the proper movie clips for practicing. So we basically have to either work with partners or use our own employees to sort of do the editing, and that's a lot of work as well. So I would say for this option, both the cost and user value is high. For social competition, um, I would say the user value is high as well, um, just because I think this is a proven model across different other fields, such as like Apple Sports or maybe Apple Watch, as I mentioned. Whereas it comes into the cost, I would say it's medium, um, given that the current app doesn't really have to change much. We just have to have an invite button or something, and provide another interface for monitoring the competition. So basically, the core user flow won't change. It's just some additional user inter-user engagement that has to be counted in. And the last in the Duolingo score, I would say the user value is not as high. I will put medium here potentially, just because uh, we're targeting at the casual learners who probably won't care that much about additional learning resources. And in terms of physical objects, I think the value provided might be also limited, just because those are like not as relevant to the previous 2 points. And in terms of inflation, the cost, um, I would say high, given that we have to like build a marketplace from a technical perspective, and also from operational perspective, we do have to build up the supply chain and like the prepared commodities, etc. So that's going to be a lot of like operational cost that is required. So given those reasons above, I think I'm gonna strive for the social competition one because it provides high user value, whereas the cost of implementation is relatively lower. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Great. I'm gonna go for this one. So because I think the time is almost used up, I could either talk about the risk or trade-off or the success matrix. Which one do you prefer?
Let's talk about success metrics.
Sure. So I could just brainstorm some of the metrics we can use to track how successful this feature would be. Um, so I put like percentage of users who invite friends, the time or frequency of usage of people who engage in social competition versus individual users. And virality. So there are three potential metrics I can look into. The first one is how much time or frequency of usage people are having in terms of using Duolingo when it compares between people who actually engage in a social competition versus people who do not, basically the individual users. So I think that could indicate the level of help we're bringing when implementing this feature. Second thing I'm going to look at is the percentage of users who actually invite friends, and I think that could indicate how many people are actually interested in engaging in such kind of social competition. The third thing is more the virality effect, basically referring to let's say how many people one person is inviting to join a social competition on average. So, for example, I could invite like 4 different friends to compete with me in the same time, and it could be also like one-on-one or something. So I want to look at that virality or coefficient as well. And among the three, I think the first one is the North Star matrix I'm going to look at because that gives us the most direct measure of the level of engagement when it comes to whether you have the social competition or not as a core element. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. That's the. I guess we can wrap up the case here.
Yeah, I think that's good. Do you want me to give you feedback or do you want to
No,
self-reflect for a bit?
you can jump into feedback. I think I spent like 38 minutes, so the time is pretty much a little bit over.
I
Uh,
think, yeah, I mean, I think that was also because I kind of grilled you a bit hard, especially in the beginning, asking you to like really dive in deep in some areas.
mhm.
Um, but I think overall the structure was good. Very surprised, I guess. I mean, nothing wrong. I was very surprised that um we jumped into user segments first, and then from there you really started drilling even deeper. So, for example, when you were looking at like K-12 university early careers, right, and experienced professionals, and then I was like, okay, like, let's focus on university students and early careers, and then you decided even like a more in depth in terms of early career, right, active learners and like casual learners. I think that was a great point. That's a good point. Um, I think one of the main points that I have like in terms of letting you know is when you were talking about like high user benefit, high cost, right? When you came out, when you were talking about solutions, one thing I think you should really think about is you did talk about having operational, right, and other costs. but you never really specify what other cost was, right? And I was kind of assuming that you would talk about it, especially for movie dubbing, right? Because you talked a lot about the technicality and operational costs, but you never talked about the other section, which is like, what about the legal aspect, right? Like, how much does it cost for rights, right? Isn't that something that we need to add in, especially if you're dealing with movies or other people's like intellectual property? I think that was something that you could really focus on. Um, Second was um, I wrote some notes here. Um, oh yeah, when he talked about the different use cases, so you did split it between business and leisure, right? Personal interest, and then you from there you split it into a smaller user group, right? Um, I think it's good just to double check with the interviewer at the time, just being like, okay, I'm going to split it more into user groups because I was a bit confused for a split second because you already split it into three different user segments, right? And then you're splitting even more, and I was confused as to whether you were going to branch onto both of them or were you going to focus on one. And it was afterwards when you kind of explained like, oh, like which one do you want to like explain more about? I kind of understand fully. I think if you just kind of let the user know or the interviewer like talk about advanced, like, okay, I have these use cases, business and leisure. And because we're focusing on the leisure or personal interest group, let me talk about just even making it more clear, just the different user groups inside this use case. And then you explain like active users, passive learners. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then after that, overall, I think it was good. Your pain points prioritization, you mostly talked about depth. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I thought you would do a bit more prioritization in terms of other aspects of role besides depth. But I think overall lack of motivation, sorry, seemed like to be a very large pain point even for me as an interviewer. I feel like that's something that it was good that you brought up. So it kind of balanced out like the prioritization of me just looking at depth. But after overall though, I felt like it was good. Um, yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I think in terms of user segments or persona, it's definitely rare to me as well. In terms of like I'm drilling down like three levels. Typically, it's just one level at most two. But it's just like when I was actually analyzing this, I do want to go into the proper depth to narrow down to the level that I feel comfortable with. So I guess what I could improve in terms of that is more on the communication side. Like I was asking repetitive questions like, what do you think about this? Like, which one do you want me to focus on? So it sounds a little bit like boring. So I was thinking like if there could be better way to convey that, like instead of asking which one do you prefer or something.
Got you. Yeah, I mean it's good. I think um I like the fact that it's in depth. I think the only concern is like because we were at like 38 minutes, right? Like let's say that I didn't enjoy it that well, or I didn't enjoy it as much as I did. Um, I was just concerned like maybe the last part in terms of passive active learners, that's something that you could have tied it together early on in advance when you were talking about the user segments, because I feel like we dive in so deep, which is a good thing, right? Because it made like it gave us a better understanding of what's going on, but then we also need to consider time, right?
Yeah, I think there is a trade-off here. I mean, the more specific you have, the more coherent you can make the rest of the part with the the formal. Because when I was, I mean, one thing I feel comfortable with moving on is that I do have like the use frequency as one very as essential constraint when we're talking about the solutions we're proposing or the pain points we're addressing here. Like for example, if it's going to be active user, then the motivation problem may not be as severe because they already have that habit. And when it comes to solutions, then it doesn't serve as well a purpose. So I feel like that point is still quite relevant. But I was just thinking about like better ways to put it, or to save time, or to keep it more efficient. And the one thing I was thinking is that possibly I could propose that I want to focus on this before asking you whether which one you prefer. I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that mindset is good. Sorry. I just like now that you explain it, it makes more sense to me. Um, I think yeah, that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that then, I guess. If that's how you put it, I think there's nothing wrong in terms of the way that you did it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was thinking just right now is the other way to segment users is that you propose different criteria in the beginning instead of like directly picking one thing and then the second thing and then the third thing. For example, you could say, okay, different ways that I could segment users is like age group, and then use frequency, and then purpose. So like the purpose could be for like business or education. It could be also like for personal interest, and then you make a combination like out of the three. So let's say like we want to focus on external professionals, and also we want to focus. So that's like you convert that sequential process into like a parallel process, and then this potentially save time as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Got it. Yeah. Um,
How do you
but yeah,
how do you
go
feel about
ahead.
the rest of the communication?
The communication was good. I think the only it's not you, but it's more like sometimes you get cut off. So
Okay.
it's just, I think it's just internet issues. But overall though, like it wasn't cut off to the point where like I couldn't understand. When you came back, I still understood like what you were talking about. It only happened like once or twice throughout the interview.
Sure. Yeah, and I would say that I personally I feel like in the very beginning this question is pretty broad, but as I was asking more clarification questions, and also like drilling down the actual segment that we want to address, and also like real navigating to the specific pain points we're addressing here, it becomes a lot more clear. So I personally feel comfortable navigating this question, even though like I failed Duolingo's interview a while ago. Yeah, thanks for the question though.
Yeah, no problem. I just like I was looking through questions and I was like, well, you have practiced Duolingo before. I might as well throw this issue to you.
Sure, yeah, that's going to be relevant to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, do you have I know we were up to 5:30. Do you have a time commitment or do you want to continue on or
We
do you
can
think we should do
do.
another time?
Um, I do have to leave before 6 to the latest, but yeah, I don't think I have like something that is directly conflicting. Yeah, I don't. So we can practice a short one if you want.
Yeah, I'm down.
Or
I have yeah, same as you. I do have another meeting at 6, but that's it. Overall, like it's not too bad. And we can do
sure,
something short.
yeah, we can do something short then. Um, you want to do product design as well, right?
Yeah, product design would be fine.
Okay. Let me ask you this one. How would you? Let me start the time.
Oh, okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, give me 1 second. So sorry. Okay, let me share my screen real fast. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, I'm done. I'm ready.
Okay. So, question I have for you today is, how would you improve Netflix?
I'm sorry.
How would you improve Netflix?
How would you improve Netflix? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. So before we start, do you mind if I ask some clarifying questions?
Sure.
So one thing is when we talk about Netflix, are we talking about a specific platform? Are we talking about the web version or the mobile version?
Which one do you want to focus on? Or maybe it's open to you when you move further. But I think it's open for you right
Yeah, I think because like the current pandemic, most people will probably be on just at home. So I think they'll be wanting to watch Netflix on like a larger screen. So I think we'll be focusing more on the web version, if that's cool with you.
now. Sounds good.
Okay. And then another question I have is there a specific goal in mind when it comes to improving Netflix? Are we looking at engagement, monetization, acquisition?
Um, what's your thought on the priority here?
Yeah, so I think right now, just because of the overall situation with just streaming services, there's just so many competitors out there. I think we do have Netflix does have the brand value and recognition. So I don't think we should really be concerned of more user acquisition, but more of user engagement. Uh, Monetization, I think we have that covered as well. I think personally we should be focusing more on user engagement just because there tends to be like people having multiple streaming accounts, but they don't spend too much time on one platform rather than the next. So I think by able to like entice more people to really be engaged on Netflix, we might be able to just bring kind of a better user experience for them as well.
Sure, but how about we focus on monetization?
Monetization? Okay, that works with me too. Do you mind then, if we're going to focus on monetization, do you mind if I ask a bit more into, as in, are there specific ways that you want to monetize? I know right now that we have a subscription-based service for monthly. Are there any other kind of goals or ideas you want for this monetization?
Let's do focus on subscription model for now.
Okay, got you. And then when we're talking about subscription, are we looking at the current base subscription, or can it be something if we are going to create a new feature or a new line that we can use a subscription service for that product as well?
Sorry, what's the first part of the question?
So I was asking is, are we looking at ways to improve the current subscription model that we have for Netflix, where we're like charging customers like $14 a month or something? Or are there ways, or is it open to creating a new feature, a new product that will help boost another additional subscription-based monetization?
I think both are okay. So feel free to explore.
Got it. That sounds good to me. Last but not least is, are we looking at any kind of constraints, and are we looking at, is there a specific region that we're focusing on when it comes to this Netflix?
We're just looking at US market right now.
Sounds good. Okay. Now I'm just gonna be, do you mind giving me some time just to think about the user segments that we can think of?
Sure. Just gonna leave for 1 minute.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so I have like 3 user segments in mind. So first we have our casual users, like people that kind of watch movies or TV shows, but they never finish, or they only watch like a portion of it. Second of all is just people that are binge watchers. So people that really spend a lot of time, like they sit for hours on end, on the couch, and they watch like movie after movie or TV show after TV show. Uh, those kind of people are really focused on the content, and they don't want to like have outside distractions when they watch. Last but not least are kind of show fans. So people that like watch a specific show, whether it be like a Netflix exclusive like TV show or kind of a movie, and they only want to watch that show, and they hop around different streaming services as well besides Netflix. Um, Based off these user segments, are there any that you want to kind of touch upon, or do you want me to prioritize them?
Yeah, I would like to see how you plan to prioritize them. And those segments sound reasonable. I'm just quickly
Yeah,
something I'm listening, so you can keep talking.
yeah, no worries.
Yep, back.
No worries. Yeah, I'm just writing down my thoughts real fast. Okay, so there are two types of prioritization that we can think of because our goal right now is to focus on kind of improving our subscription monetization. Two things that we can think about is the reach, which in terms of how many people that we can kind of gather around because of this monetization, and two is user benefit. So is this beneficial for users? Will users want to spend money for this new subscription feature? So, oh, sorry, this monetization basically. And so when we look at casual users, the reach is huge. There's a lot of casual users on Netflix. However, I feel like if there's going to be some sort of monetization that's going to kind of alter or increase the cost that they have to spend, the user benefit will be low because these are users that don't really spend that much time on Netflix anyways and feel like the value of this is just not worth it. Second would be binge watchers. So these are the type, the reach is a bit smaller. There's a smaller portion of binge watchers than there are casual watchers, but the benefit will be high because these are people that feel like they spend a lot of time on Netflix already. So the value of them increasing the amount that they have to pay seems justifiable to the amount of time they spend on the platform. Next is show fans. So the reach are a bit smaller than binge watchers just because their interests are a lot more narrower, that they're only looking at specific shows on Netflix. And the fact that they jump into multiple streaming services, um, it is possible that the user benefit is more medium just because the fact that they may feel justified to spend more on Netflix for these specific shows. But if these shows are canceled or moved or their rights have been bought by another streaming platform, then they would cancel their Netflix service because they follow the show, not the platform itself. So I think because of all of this, I think our best bet is to be specifically focused on binge watchers.
So for binge watchers, I want to understand more about how you view them as a group. Do you think they watch the binge watch very often, or like do they spend all the time just binge watching all the time, or how does it work?
Yeah, so my definition of binge watchers are people that, especially in this pandemic, is like once they get out of their job or they're done with school, they'll sit like a lot, they'll spend most of their free time watching different shows or watching different movies on the Netflix platform itself. So they can spend hours and hours just sitting there and watching Netflix.
On a very frequent and regular basis, right?
Yes, on a regular basis.
And the difference between them and the casual watcher is just they spend longer hours than casual watchers. That in terms of frequency, they're similar. So,
Yeah, so casual watchers, I'm assuming it'll be more like they'll watch perhaps one TV show or half a movie like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And binge watchers will be more like they watch like hours of content every day.
okay, sounds good. Sure.
All right, that works. Then I'll put as binge watchers. Oh, so do you mind if you give me some time to think about a couple of use cases and pain points for these binge watchers?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, so I have come up with four kind of pain points that these binge watchers may have. The first one is selection. It's something that they don't know what movie to watch or what show to watch, basically. So they finish one TV show, it's like 50 episodes long, and they're like, well, I just finished it. I don't know what else to watch. What should I watch? Um, Second one would be passion. So binge watchers are the type of people because they sit for hours and hours. It's because they love to watch movies, they love to watch TV shows, and they analyze it. Therefore, it's a pain point when especially in the pandemic, they don't have anyone to talk to about their movie experience, right? People that maybe with friends and families, they get bored hearing their like in-depth analysis of a movie. So maybe they want to find like community to talk about and share like their different experiences. Next one that I have is recommendations. So they don't really get accurate recommendations, or the recommendations that they do get don't really match what they want to see. For example, they know they want to watch like a certain genre, let's say comedy, and just the movie recommendations that they have based on their past history doesn't really seem to add up to what they really want to see or want to get. So that's also another pain point. And last but not least is interruptions. So they might get interrupted because something happens outside of Netflix. So perhaps like a visitor shows up or they get a call from someone and they get interrupted, and that kind of damages their movie experience with Netflix. Um, so these are my four pain points. Are there any of them that you want me to kind of dive deeper in, or I can definitely just start prioritizing them?
Sure. I feel like the first and third one are pretty similar. So I guess we can talk about them all together. And apart from that, I think feel free to move on and prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're definitely right. First and third are definitely very combined. Um, so we can definitely talk about the prioritization. Do you mind giving me a few moments to just kind of list out some criteria?
Sure.
Okay, so two criteria that I came up with prioritization is one is demand. So how much of a demand is there to solve this pain point from the users? And second is user benefit. So how much, if we do improve this user benefit, how much of a benefit will they get? Will it improve their user experience? So just to kind of reiterate, so the product goal that we have right now is to improve the monetization of the subscription service of Netflix. Then the user goal themselves is they want to have a great user experience when watching quality media on Netflix. So in that sense, the criteria do tie well with the user goal and the product goal. Um, so when looking at the selection and recommendations, the demand is really high when it comes to that, because of the fact that users do want to watch movies, especially binge watchers. They do want to keep continuously watching movies, keep continuously having ideas or suggestions to keep watching when they're on Netflix. And that demand is high, and the user benefit, if you can solve this pain point, there will be a great user benefit, especially for these types of users. When we're looking at passion, that they don't have anyone to talk to about their movie experience, the demand is more medium. I say that there are binge watchers out there that do want to express their thoughts and analysis of this, but there is not much of a demand with other ones. Some or good amount of binge watchers that even that I know personally are, they just want to watch movies and kind of get immersed in it, but they don't really want to analyze it too deeply with other people. They rather spend that time watching other movies or starting new shows as well. So I say the user benefits around medium as well when it comes to passion. And last but not least is interruptions. They get interrupted and forget where they are if something happens like in life. The demand is really low here. This is something that happens not just for binge watchers, but for any of them, casual watchers, show fans. And the user benefit is low and is something that we really can't control on our platform itself. So I think overall we'll be looking specifically on selection and recommendations. And if we do have time, I'll try to incorporate passions if possible into our potential improvement. How does that sound?
Wait, so you're saying that user benefit is not something that we can control, or that?
For user benefit
Mhm.
or for interruptions, the pain points for interruptions?
Because I remember one of your sentences is that user benefit is not something that we can control or something.
Oh, sorry. User benefit is it's how much people will like appreciate the pain point being solved. Like, does this pain point get solved? And I'm talking about is more the interruptions. Something what I was talking about is like if people get interrupted and forget what they are outside of Netflix, the interruptions that occur is not something that we can control. But of course, forgetting where they are is something that we can control on our platform. But I was trying to distinguish that by itself.
Sure, sounds good. So you're only referring to like the user benefit of that side of that pain point is not acceptable. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Good for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. So then I'll be looking at recommendations and selections, and I will, if I have time, I will try to implement passions as well.
Sure. We can focus on selection recommendations.
Okay, sounds good. Do you mind giving me some time to like list out some of the solutions I have? Thank you. So right now I've come up with 4 potential solutions when it comes to improving Netflix subscription-based monetization. Uh, One is that we have a customer service kind of representative, people who are more movie experts that you can talk to on the phone or video chat, that they can recommend you movies on the spot based off your experiences and kind of what you're interested in. So this is a way that we can definitely do like a subscription-based service on it. These are all, sorry, just FYI, is all of these solutions are potential ways that we can improve our monetization for a subscription-based service on Netflix. So the second solution that I have is having a platform that kind of shows the movie that you have been watching with a more in-depth analysis. For example, they'll take a more in-depth analysis on the genre, the plot, and they match that with other movies in their database that they may have similar results as well. Um, Third is just access to a community of avid moviegoers to kind of discuss movies and share their experience and recommendations about movie genres. So this could be a subscription-based service where you will then have access to kind of like a Netflix social media aspect where people that kind of share the same experiences or same interests as you. For example, maybe everyone likes Game of Thrones. So everyone in this community talks about Game of Thrones, and then they can kind of share their experiences about the movie, at the same time recommend you different movies that kind of tie in perhaps the same plot of Game of Thrones, the same genre, or etc. Last but not least is creating kind of a service for extra movie watchers to kind of suggest you movies and TV shows based off your past watching history. So this is more um, kind of like in the real world where you have people that pick your outfits and then they send it to you. This is kind of something similar. This could be like a monthly subscription service where based off the different movies that you've watched, the different genres that you seem to interact with a lot with Netflix, moviegoers can kind of tailor some movies and TV shows and give you like a list to watch for that whole month.
So the difference between the fourth and the first one is just the first one is like Netflix own employees, whereas the second ones are like the fourth one is more like the third party individuals, right?
Right. Yeah. First one is more like in-house Netflix. Fourth one is we will be like exporting this list to a separate like movie expert that they can then tailor movies and TV shows for you to watch, whether it be like a well-known producer or a well-known director, and then comes back to you.
And when you say talk to, are you referring to like actually like calling or you know through a message or something?
Yeah. So the first one I'm thinking about is more like we can charge it in a way that like for every month you get to call this representative 5 times and an hour each time, and in that 1 hour you can talk to him about anything that you want, and then about recommending movies to you and such.
Sure. I think we can quickly talk about prioritization before wrapping up this case. For the sake of time, if
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind just give me a couple seconds to think of
sure.
some prioritization? Thank you. Okay, so for my two kind of criteria for prioritization, I have one is the engagement. So how much will users be willing or want to engage with this feature? Are they willing to spend money for this additional perk? Second one will be implementation cost. So this will be talking about the technical cost, operation costs, right? Legal costs and such that may have to deal with this as well. Um, so those are my two. So when we talk about the first one, the engagement is seemingly high. The fact is that you are talking to someone on the other end. So especially in the pandemic, people may feel lacking that they don't have someone to talk to, and the fact that it does kind of reach the fact that they will get better recommendations when they talk to someone one on one rather than trying to use a program or use a platform. So it is something that I feel like the engagement will be high. Second is that they may feel that, oh, this person seems to know what they're doing, and so they may some kind of like respect for them as well. The implementation cost isn't too high. Just the fact that you may just have to hire additional people that are movie experts. That's probably the amount of cost that it comes to when it comes to this. And then setting up technical wise, just setting up kind of a hotline or kind of subscription based kind of feature that people can call into this line and get directed into a movie expert. But I feel like because Netflix already has like a HR kind of department, we can kind of take that same framework and then put it into this feature as well. So the implementation cost will be low. Second, we have is having a platform that shows movies that you can watch with in-depth analysis. Engagement, I say will be around medium. is because of the fact that Netflix already has kind of like, 98% match, or kind of already a good algorithm when it comes to recommendations. It may not be perfect, but to have a more in-depth analysis of like genre plot, it may just, for other people, it may just seem like it's just a better version of the algorithm, and they just don't feel like it may be justifiable to spend more money on this algorithm. So the engagement might be low. Implementation costs will be high because you do have to refine the algorithm a bit more. Next but not least, next one is access to a community. So this is create more of like a social media platform. The engagement may be high, that people may be interested in trying out this new social media platform, and they want to kind of have this community of people that are passionate about movies and binge watch movies like they do. So it may be the engagement be high. However, the implementation cost will be high because this will basically become like an entire social media platform that Netflix will have to construct from scratch. And the technical cost will be super high for this. And last but not least is creating a service for expert movie watchers to suggest you movies. So this is more of like not in-house, but kind of third-party suggestions. Engagement will be high, especially if we're able to find people that are well-renowned. For example, well-known producers, well-known actors, or well-known directors. If you have these well-known people, people will most likely be really engaged and want to hear their thoughts and opinions about them. Um, However, the implementation cost will also be high, due to the fact that one you have to think about is how much will it cost to bring these producers on board into this, especially because of the fact that this may be, even though it may be a monthly thing, these people who are well known and famous have to kind of put these different customers on like in their busy schedule, and this may be hard to do, especially the fact that we'll have to pay them a lot to just even get them on board. So the implementation cost will be high. Looking at all of this, I think the best bet is to have our first option is to have a customer service representative who are movie experts that you can talk to for recommendations. Just because the engagement will be high, however, the implementation cost won't be as high as the other features that we have, especially for the last one when it comes to expert movie watchers. How does this sound?
Sure. Sounds good. So, like, we only have like 9 minutes or something. I'll just directly jump to feedback. Um, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I did want to add like,
Sure. So,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
wait, you talk a little bit.
Oh, I was just going to say, I did have a bit of, if we did have time, I would have like added like success metrics or trade-offs, but
Yeah,
yeah, but it's fine.
we're running on short on time, so I would say, can you keep sharing your screen just so I.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So sorry about that. Give me
So,
1 second.
yeah, I would say in general, structure-wise, definitely good, and I like the fact that you sort of internalize it, some of the past question, like or the feedback that I've given you. But by the way, I've done like 4 hours of mock interview in a row. I'm kind of burnt out, but yeah. So I'm curious how you handle the keyboard stroke noise. Did you have like a shortcut to mute yourself or something? Because you
Wait,
did the keyboard stroke.
I'm sorry. I think, can you speak a bit clearly? Sorry, I think it's just the internet is really bad. Can you repeat what you said?
How about now?
Oh yeah, it works now.
Yeah, I was wondering how you handle the keyboard stroke sound, like
Yeah,
a shortcut for muting yourself, or
yeah. So what happened was I recorded myself like often. I realized like Zoom has this like reduced background noise and it's on auto. So what I did was now is that it is loud is while when I type and when I speak at the same time.
oh,
But if I stop speaking, the keyboard sounds gets very muted.
that, that's super smart. Yeah, that's super smart. Yeah, I was wondering how you would do that so smartly and like very naturally, but yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, so I like the fact that you were able to include like COVID situation, and also you were clarifying other methods of monetization as well as subscription models. That's pretty good. And I deliberately picked monetization because that's the type of case that we don't practice very often, and I sort of want to go through and think about that as well. Um, in terms of the specific question, can you go up a little bit? It's interesting. I'm not sure whether I've mentioned this to you at all or not, but I segment the users almost the same way as you do. Even the name is the same. Like I call them casual watchers, binge watchers, and the only difference that I call them show followers instead of show fans. So
Oh,
did I ever mention to you or never?
no, no, I don't. I don't think. No, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know. I was just thinking on the top of my head, like what kind of people watch shows? Because I'm low key a show follower. You know, like I just watch shows, and then like if they're on Netflix or if they're on Viki or if they're like Disney Plus, then I'll just go to that streaming platform. And then
That's yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I when I was thinking about this, I was like listing those vocabularies, but because I'm not a native speaker, so I was not sure whether they actually make sense. And then it was really interesting to see you typing the same exact words. I was sharing this with the other interview partner earlier, so I was kind of confusing. I kind of confused you too. So I was thinking, okay, maybe probably because I've told Derek and Derek was using the same personas as I did, but apparently not, which is interesting. But also, the definition is a little bit different though. Like when I was introducing binge watchers, I was referring to people who seldom watch shows, but whenever they watch, they actually binge watch. That's me actually. Like I don't really watch binge watch every day, but like once in a while, I binge watch for like 10 hours or something. That's what I call it, binge watcher. However, like casual watchers, I refer to them those people as like people who like get off work and then they just open Netflix or TV and then they just spend like 1 or 2 hours or even more every day. So the frequency is a little bit different, but after your justification, I feel like it definitely makes sense. Um, and I definitely also agree that you can charge people differently based on their user personas. Um, moving on to pain points, I do think the good thing I like about it is that you did start using like process for an idea, like using a small phrase or vocabulary here, like selection, passion, or recommendation. I don't feel like passion is really describing the second point though. I feel like you're more talking about the community aspect or the social aspect, whereas passion is more like an individual or personal focus. So I think maybe picking a better word or maybe using phrases can help you define that or represent that better. And also selection and recommendation, to me, they're just basically one point. So I brought it up. I feel like a better way is to directly drag that point under selection to group them together so that it's also easier to talk about them together. If you tap the second one or you just drag it under selection, that would be better. And also, I feel like in general, when thinking about those, if you want to use like simple vocabulary to cover the whole space, try to make them messy. Try to make them like as high level and abstract as possible, so that if you look at the major aspects of different things, right? So recommendation, like for example, sometimes you can follow a user journey. Like in the beginning, it's the selection. Uh, the structure I used was like before watching the movie, during watching the movie, and after watching the movie. So you want to give people the sense that you're following some kind of structure instead of like just recommending point based on what you thought of it. Um, and the interruptions, that one is well like a little bit edgy, but I think it still makes sense. It's just like not part of the thing that, as you said, Netflix can do much. I think there are other things if you go in depth that it can be improved, such as if you binge watch, you have a lot of things to memorize at the same time. Could you provide a better way to prompt users whenever they actually move into like a later season or later episode? Also, could you provide like a rating or something? The kind of comments or reviews you have on IMDb, can you provide an integration? I mean, that sort of circles back to circle forward to solution part as well. But in general, I think it's better to go more in depth uh, in terms of your analysis than raising up like the quantity of the points here if it's not as relevant. The interruption to me is kind of not as relevant because it's something that you cannot solve at all. In terms of prioritization, I do like the fact that you bring together user goal and product goal. Um, maybe during the user goal side, you can sort of circle like relate that more closely with monetization. Like for example, uh, you can tell that in the format of a user story or something. I For example, I want the quality of service to be so good that I'm willing to pay for the service or something like that. So that in that way, it's more related to monetization or subscription. Because have a great user experience, it's just really broad and vague. Because you can see that for any problem you're solving for product questions. In terms of solution, I would want to see you adopting the same strategy in terms of finding proxies, finding representation of each idea in the beginning instead of having full sentences here. The readability is not as high or as good. So I still also feel like you're being a little bit verbose here as compared to previously. Uh, a lot of the communication can be more concise and summarized, and you can group similar things together in order to avoid duplication. For example, the first and fourth one, you could start with a upper level bucket, something like human recommendation, right? And human can be both employees or third parties, and then you can divide them into like a sub bucket or something. Make your answers more structured because they just share a lot of similarity, and you can also utilize the similarity when you're actually analyzing to avoid having to go through four options instead of like 3 or 3.5. Yeah, social platform that is good. And yeah, and I think in general, just finding the good vocabulary that can represent an idea will just simplify the communication a lot more and help you make stronger points and impression in interview mind. Lastly, the prioritization use the engagement, but since this is a context under monetization, I would encourage you to use willingness to pay. Because, for example, people might have a high willingness to engage, but they don't want to pay for it. For example, the community aspect, like IMDb, or in China we have like Douban, which basically has a huge community, and no one is willing to pay for the community ownership, but they are willing to pay for like some kind of personalized experience, and that comes to the human recommendation part. So I think willing to pay is definitely much more relevant here, and that sort of also disapprove the idea that is more relative to community, unless you're providing some kind of unique value.
Got it. I think one question was, one thing that I had in mind was I was gonna write monetization, meaning like it's like I was gonna say like, oh, like people be like wanting to spend money on it, but I didn't know if that sounded too like company focused and not user focused when it comes to like, especially when it comes to like monetization. I wasn't too sure whether that should be something that I consider, because I know interviewers want to be more user focused, right?
That's something I mentioned about lift pricing as well. Oh, actually, I didn't mention to you. I confused again. But yeah, I did a question. Did you do the lift pricing question? You still remember, right? Yeah, we did that question. Dynamic pricing for lift.
Oh yes, we have done it a while ago.
Yeah, we had that discussion over monetization versus user experience, right? So monetization by nature is about maximizing profit. So you can always focus on monetization with user experience in mind. So you're not infringing user benefits at all by charging them. In fact, you're justifying the monetization efforts by saying that we're exploiting the willingness to pay. Definitely not use the word exploit, but that's what it meant, right?
Yeah,
So in business, it's always about getting the right match between willingness to pay and price. You want to discriminate over people just because you want to assign the exact willingness to pay as a price, but it's not possible. So that's more like from an economics point of view. Yeah, economics. Yes. I
mm,
think it's okay. It's okay. Willingness to pay is relatively more neutral as well.
yeah, that's true. It's better than say monetization. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah,
They
thank
are
you.
they are thinking that the last point, I guess. It's I think for this question it's okay, but just for more in-depth thinking, I think you do have to think about like the actual feasibility of implementation, or like how much you differentiate with the current solution, where really whether it is feasible to implement that feature. For example, customer service representatives provide this recommendation. Labor cost would just be too high, from my intuition. Labor cost is too high; it's not justifiable at all. And also, I don't think we can do a better job than the current recommendation engine that Netflix is providing. Netflix is the bread and butter of Netflix is their recommendation engine, and now you're proposing something that is like human driven. And one thing about human driven is that it's not scalable. It's not scalable, and also it's not really making use of the big data that Netflix has over the whole audience population. So unless you can sort of strike a sweet point between the two, in terms of like the employees utilizing the recommendation engine or the big data behind Netflix, otherwise you're sort of like cannibalizing your own advantage, that is bread and butter of the platform. And scalability and also a lot of other things should be also considered. But I mean, I don't think an interviewer would expect you to consider all those factors during an interview. But it's just something for thoughts.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think that's very insightful, especially when it comes to like actual implementation costs. I'll definitely like consider that specific for next time as well.
Sure. Sounds good. I guess you have to run for another call as well, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have to run
Okay.
for another
Well,
call.
all right. Good chatting today, and
Yeah,
have a good evening.
yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much. Good luck on your interview next week,
Thanks.
and I'll see you soon probably.
Yeah. See you soon.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
You as well.